Okay, so it's 6:30, 6:30. We'll start right now. So greetings, good evening, and welcome to GD Goenka Plan Academy in association with GD Goenka University. I'm very excited sharing this platform with all of you. My name is Dr. Abha Sharma, and I'm heading School of Education, GD Goenka University, Gurgaon. I thank you all for joining us in this webinar on taking the upper hand online, focusing on speaking, pronunciation, and accuracy. We will be recording the presentation as usual and would be posting the link on GD Goenka School of Education Facebook page. For Q&A session, you are requested to post the questions in the comment box. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Rob Howard, who's the owner of Online Language Center and managing partner of Business Language Training Institute. He is an active EFL communication skill and business English facilitator training teachers to build their own freelance businesses. Rob is a joint coordinator for IATEFL, online and video coordinator for the Visual Arts Circle, and has authored and co-authored several books for EFL. He is also co-founder of the Independent Authors and Publishers, worldwide speaker on online teaching technology, continuing professional development, business development, and image presentation, and the founder of EFL Talks. He is a finalist for the 2016 British Council's ELTN Award for Innovation in Teacher Resources. Thank you and welcome, Rob, to GD Goenka Uplearn Academy. We would like to know more about how to focus on speaking, pronunciation, and accuracy. Over to you, Rob.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and really a pleasure to be here today. And I'm so glad you've invited me. And welcome to all of you teachers that are here. First thing, I hope you can understand me all right. My English isn't very good. I'm American. So let me share my presentation. And okay, here we go. Now, everybody seeing it yet? Okay, wait till it comes up. All right, great. Okay, good. So what we're going to do is we're going to really, everybody has sort of been forced into teaching online, and I know it's been just over a year now for most people. The reality for me is I've actually been teaching online for over 20 years, and I love it. So I'm sure you're becoming pros at it, but hopefully I have some ideas for you that'll help and make your job easier and make the students more engaged. So, getting started, let me just make sure my presentation tool is connecting, and it's not. Okay, and you heard all the things that I do. I keep pretty busy. So let's get to the online portion. So taking everything online, as I said, this is new for a lot of people, and it's been a difficult and challenging time for people to concentrate on learning new ways of teaching and also getting your students engaged and involved. Now, just a little bit about my background and where I'm coming from. I specialize in business English. Excuse me, I have allergies. It's not COVID. I specialize in business English, and this is the reality that I face throughout the world. The people that are coming to me are people that have studied English in the past, usually when they were younger, and they may have studied in high school, they may have studied in university, but now they need it for their job. And this actually gave me a whole different attitude about what we should have been doing years before. Now, business English, people hear business English and they get afraid. So forget business English. Let's call it career English, or better yet, let's call it workplace English. And this is the reality for most of our students. Now, very few people study English for 6 to 8 years just to watch Netflix, and very few do it just to go to Disneyland for 2 weeks. They're doing this mostly because of their future and their careers. So, my reality is 95% of my students are returning students. That means they've finished a course in the past, but they need help. They're struggling when it comes to using English outside of the classroom. And the first thing we need to do is discuss with them what their particular needs are. Now, what I like to do is analyze the subject they're studying if I'm dealing with university students. For example, you may be teaching English to engineers. You may be teaching it to medical personnel. And you have to see how will English be used within that field. And I like to do an in-depth analysis with the student to better understand the field that they're working with. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, so there are many fields that I'm pretty expert at. For example, I've worked with many doctors, hundreds of lawyers, a lot in oil and gas when I lived in Brazil. And now I've been mostly specializing in IT. And most of my students are from Eastern Europe, Russia, who are IT specialists. Now, you're going to use this analysis to build a course that meets your students' needs, and you have to adapt activities to be relevant to their field. I love to use task-based learning. You may call it project-based learning. Excuse me, project-based learning. And this for me is the most effective. I like it much better than using your course book. And then we want to finish off and evaluate all the classes that we've done. Now, content. This is going to be the trickiest thing that you're going to come up with is what is good content for the people that you're working with. Now, keeping in mind what they're going to need English for in the future. And this goes right down to if you're working with teenagers in high school. I've done this with my teenagers that I had because this, quite frankly, is their future. So, yeah, that's weird. We have somebody else presenting. Okay. So I don't know if you can see that. Is it big enough? Okay. So what you want to do is work with some specific skills that they're going to need in the future. Have them present company products, make up different products. They can do greetings at trade fairs. They can do teleconferences like this, participate in meetings. This is something everybody will have to do in the future. Writing reports and emails, negotiating contracts, strategy discussion, logistics, even small talk. You'd be amazed at how many business people come to me just to work on small talk. They can deal with the boardroom. They don't know how to talk about life outside of the boardroom afterwards. And how to lead training. You know, English, this is domain-specific skills that we want to work on. And these are higher order thinking skills. So what we want to work on is fluency activities, because most people inevitably are going to be talking. All right. So most of what they need is strength in their speaking, communication, and pronunciation and accuracy. So, keeping in mind what the students' needs are and what the students' objectives are, we have to decide what kind of luggage have they brought with them. And by luggage, I mean, what bad habits do they have? You've probably heard fossilization. For instance, when students made mistakes when they were younger, chances are they're going to continue those mistakes into adulthood because they just have become habit. And people realize that they have a lot of frustration in the workplace or talking with other professionals. So the reality, here's my reality. Here's what I find that I get with returning students. Their vocabulary is usually good, especially if they work in a business. They know the vocabulary of their business. Usually they have very good listening skills. And most of the time they have great reading skills because these are skills that have developed over the years and they're personal. They can go at their own rate. Where I find the biggest problems come about are their speaking tends to have problems, and their writing definitely has problems because of their lack of grammar and not remembering the grammar that they started with. So the first thing that we want to work on, and all of this goes to help them speak and become accurate. First thing we want is vocabulary. And vocabulary is easy to learn, especially when people are older and they're adults. Where do you get vocabulary? Do you get it from course books? Usually not. Because course books, although they're great for general English and teaching rules and teaching basic grammar, teaching the basics to get you started, even though there's a lot of English, business English course books out there, even some specifically designed for courses, for specific jobs, they're really lacking. And one of the problems with course books is course books usually take 2 to 3 years to develop and get to market. So especially if you're dealing in the IT field, by the time the book gets to market, it's already obsolete. And those of you who may work with course books, I remember one of my old bosses works for one of the large publishing educational book manufacturers, and she was bragging at the time how their new book is coming out, and they're going to talk about the Black Eyed Peas. And I was surprised at how many people already didn't know who the Black Eyed Peas were. So course books are not necessarily your best choice. Now, keep in mind, most people who are studying engineering, medicine, work at a company, they already know the vocabulary. They know the specific words they're working with. They're reading them, they're hearing them. They were probably used in their classrooms. But what we need to do is fill the vocabulary gaps, because what we tend to find is, yes, they may know the word for the front end, they may know the back end, but they don't know how to tie those two chunks together. And this is where we can work with their vocabulary and help them to fill in these gaps. Now, a lot of people will tell you, no, don't do translation. And the old days of translation were bad. Quite frankly, I think one of the best ways, and how I work with most of my students in Russia right now, is first I have them think of everything that they would need to say in a meeting in Russian, and then make sure that they can translate all of that to English. And this is where they're going to find the gaps, because we're not trying to get them to change their voice. We're not getting them to change the way they think. We're getting them to fix their English. So also in the future, they're going to have to do a lot of direct translation, meaning turning to one person, speaking whatever the native language is, and then turning another and speaking English. So this is code switching, and this is an important skill they need to work on. What I would do is make them read. Students don't read enough anymore. Everything is short. It might be short articles in magazines. It might be quick blog posts. We need to get them reading more, because reading is where they're going to start seeing the grammar more often, and it's going to help them to become more fluent. Now, I love Realia. And with my students, if you have university students, have them bring some of their coursework in. If you have high school students, they can bring in whatever songs or whatever they're listening to now. If you're dealing with people who are working, emails, memos, instructions, anything that they can bring in from work, this is what they need to learn to work with. So by all means, have them bring Realia. This way, you don't have to sort of search for course material. They've brought it in. So emails, trade magazines, journals, news, books of interest on the specific thing. I'm reading a book right now. I'm interested in the politics of Eastern Europe from the past, and I just got a book on it. And I'm actually learning new vocabulary in English, and I've been speaking for 100 years. So ebooks are great. Take advantage. They can read it on the bus, on the train, not so much when they're walking, but there's plenty of time that they have where they can take advantage and read an ebook right on their phone or tablet. One thing I always have them do too is working with podcasts. Podcasts are a great idea because you can focus on directly what it is you need to work with. For example, I have an IT project manager who lives in St. Petersburg, Russia. Excuse me. He has a C2 level
Rob,
of English. Yes.
Rob, can I interfere? I'm sorry, apologies. Actually, someone presented in between, so your screen has gone small. So you need to stop sharing, then you need to share it again, please,
Okay.
so that we can see it. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah,
Mm.
I've never seen that happen before. And get back to it. Good. There. That should come up in a second. There we go. Okay, and whoever else is presenting, stop that. All right, so back to it. So podcasts are great because, for example, this student I had lived all his life. He's late 40s, early 50s. He lived all his life in St. Petersburg, Russia. And the first podcast he came across was for tourism in St. Petersburg. And he said, "Oh, this would be good. I know everything." He was amazed at how much about the city he didn't know. This made him comfortable. And I thought, what a great idea to start off with something easy that you know, so you're comfortable with working with podcasts, and then work your way up. You'll hear how vocabulary goes together. Again, there's so much time that we have that we really are just downtime. You know, riding the train, the bus, riding a bike, walking to work, whatever. Excuse me. It's a great time to listen to podcasts, and they can work on repeating, they can listen to the pronunciation and improve. Better. All right, let me get this. YouTube, another great source of information. You can basically search for anything that you want on YouTube. Same with podcasts. Put in specifically. Years ago, I had a student made me a bet. I said, "Oh, you're never going to find a Chinese engineer talking about bridges with in English." Sure enough, I found 3 videos on just that. So these are good. You can search for specific information that is pertinent to each particular student. And this is actually something good that you can do, is assign this to have your students bring authentic videos to the classroom. Now, another quick one that I recommend for my students, this is Coursera. Now, Coursera and Udemy, they offer free classes. And think about this. I studied accounting when I was in university. I had to take, because of my major, a few courses in accounting. So I understand accounting. I may be a French accountant. So I understand accounting. What I don't know is how to use English language in talking about accounting. So, taking a basic Coursera course for free, yes, I know how to do the accounting. I understand what it is they're doing. But now I'm listening to the explanations, the instructions in English for something that I'm already familiar with. It's a great way of taking advantage of the knowledge that they already have and taking advantage of learning a language, working with what they know, because this is what they're going to be talking about in the future. Okay, this is my best friend. I don't know if you guys know the thesaurus, not a dinosaurus. I'm not that old, but the thesaurus, which is the dictionary of synonyms and antonyms. I love it. I actually have, if you can see my whole screen, I have a shortcut here for thesaurus.com because I probably use it 5 or 6 times a day, just so I don't repeat the same word, or if I'm looking for a stronger word. I teach my students to do this. Once you learn a new word, learn 5 alternatives for that word. What a quick way to increase their vocabulary using a thesaurus. The online thesaurus is great. I used to have a copy of Roget's thesaurus, but online, wonderful. Word banks for learning. Word banks are applications. There's a lot of different ones on the market. Some are free, some charge you money. But the idea behind word banks is they'll go up and they'll give you words and see if you know the meaning of it and know the word. And what it does is it brings you up from A1 all the way up to C2. And then you can even add more words to it. For instance, words from your job. And the idea is it works on the principle of spaced repetition. And this is how we learn. We need consolidation of the information into our brain, and this usually happens from repetition. So I'll get the word today. Okay, good. In 2 weeks, it'll probably pop up again. Make sure I remember it. In about 4 weeks, pop up once more. And the app figures out the algorithm of what you need and when you need it. And it's a brilliant way to learn. Most of the apps are free. One of the best ones that most of my students work with is called Super Memo. I believe you have to pay for it though, but they're all very happy and they're learning additional vocabulary. Now, I insist that learners keep a learner's notebook. And what I like them to do is when they're learning new phrases and they're learning new pronunciation, they write all this down. And I want them to go back and refer to their notes every 2 weeks. Sometimes we'll do it in class. We'll say, let's go back to that class 3 weeks ago. Let's open up to your notes. What were the words that we worked on? Now, this is good because they're going to build up and keep writing things. Now, talking about pronunciation, excuse me, even though I'm American and I grew up, this is my first language. Some would say it's my only language. But no, I speak more. But there's still words in English that I have trouble pronouncing, and my tongue just trips over them. And they have all my life. For instance, the word cumulative. I'm always cumulative. It just never comes out right. What I do is part of my learner's notebook, I actually have this here stuck up in front of me. I write down the words that I need to practice. And every day I'll peek up at it and I'll practice the words a couple times just to make sure I can say them. And, I'm 100 years old. It took me 98 years to figure out to do this. So 98 years of not being able to say preliminary without going preliminary. It's just a bad habit. So simple thing as a notebook is going to make a big difference. And of course, getting the relevant lexis that they need for their job or for their future, whatever. Now, working with complex grammar and working with complex structures. This is something that I'm doing now with my students because I notice they have the vocabulary. They can build basic sentences. I am hungry, period. I will go make lunch, period. Maybe I'll make a sandwich for lunch. No, come on. With compound sentences and complex sentences, you can put that all together into one. And I go through with them, get them to rethink the phrases and sentences that they're using all the time, and seeing how we can use conditionals, clauses, mixed tenses to fix. For example, I'll give you a few examples. These came from my students. Tell me a little bit about your job. These were 3 things that came up. I said, let's rework this and put this into one sentence. So all the information is here. Just by simply pointing out that using grammar, they can put all that information and make a much more intelligent sentence. And this will help them. Remember, it's writing, it can also be speaking, but anything that they write, they're going to speak. And just to give you an idea, we got more complex. Okay. And you can see what I'm doing is taking what they already know and building on it. This is scaffolding. And I'm not having to teach them grammar because I'm getting them to feel naturally how the sentences would go together. And you see, they're getting more and more complex. Now they're doing paragraphs. So remember, especially if you're working with IT people learn coding. They learn the syntax in 1 week. They learn the basics of coding in a month. And it takes about a year to achieve mastery in coding. So they're used to learning things quickly. But can we say the same thing about language? I think we can if we take the same systematic approach that they use for learning. Now, here's a big argument. In the chat room, if you could, just put an F or an A. Which do you think is more important, fluency or accuracy? And just in the chat, put F for fluency, A for accuracy. I'm very curious. We're getting a lot of A's. B, what's B, Sherrod? A's, both equally important. Still not the answer I'm looking for. Okay. Well, let's look. We need to find, of course, the balance. And Payal, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. He's saying both are equally important. I agree with you almost totally. They are both important. But let's take a look. Speaking is focused on meaning, context, communication. This is fluency. Okay? Context and communication. This is what we're talking about for fluency. Now, writing, we're usually focused on the grammar, on the content, and on correctness. This is accuracy. So the correct answer should have been, it depends. Because there's different times when one can be more critical than the other. For instance, finding the balance here. Fluency. If I'm a waiter, a taxi driver, a tourist, watching Netflix, accuracy isn't very important. Fluency is. Being able to communicate easily and quickly. But if I'm a doctor, a lawyer, a business person, or hopefully a teacher, accuracy is much more important. One mistake in business can break up a company, can lose millions of dollars. Think about one wrong word with a lawyer, one wrong word with a doctor. I went in for, to have my arm, a broken bone fixed, and I went out missing a leg. Accuracy is more important. So the correct answer is, it depends. And we need to work within that. So we need to work with meaningful conversations. And when I say meaningful, really get into it. I argue with them. I debate. I'll be silly and take the opposite side just to get them to talk and go deeper into the conversation. And I do this every class. Now, here's some hints that I will suggest to you. I call this activity 3 ways. And what you do is come up with a scenario. Let's say I want to take 2 months off so I can travel to the Himalayas. I want you to put together a pitch for your boss to explain why this is good, why you need it, why you need the time off, and how it'll be good. Then I want you to redo the conversation like you're telling your mother. It's going to be much different than talking to your best friend. What I'm doing is I'm helping them be accurate for the right voice in the right register for the right genre. For example, if I'm talking to my best friend, dude, I want to go to the Himalayas and hang out. I hear it's gnarly there. It's really comfortable, very informal. Talking to your mother, you're going to have to justify, well, mother, it would be educationally enriching and I'll become a better son. And yes, I'll wear a scarf and be warm. Talking to your boss, you have to justify how this will help your career. So, doing the same conversation 3 different ways, this really helps them to understand the differences. So, what should we teach? I really don't consider myself a teacher. I consider myself a facilitator. So, a lot of times, sometimes I'm a teacher, sometimes I'm a coach, sometimes I'm a mentor, sometimes I'm a trainer, sometimes I'm a friend, a lot of times I'm a therapist. You know, our roles change depending on the student's needs. I do a lot of modeling. No, not this type. I don't have the body for it. But I model a lot with my students, showing them what I expect when they do this particular pattern or conversation. And I get them to use and reuse the things that they've learned. So I may have taught them something last week, but I'll get them to reuse that again this week. And we need to teach them how to reflect. We need to learn this more as teachers ourselves. Reflect on the teaching we've done. I get them to reflect on their speaking. How good was it today? Was it good enough to talk to a professional? Would you be proud if you were on television talking about this in this way? And then, like they say in the shampoo bottle, wash, rinse, and repeat. Repeat the same process over and over until they become comfortable. What I'm trying to do, excuse me, is not just to build lifelong learners, but they're forever learners. Like I said, I'm still learning the language. New words come across all the time. So they'll be forever learning. We need to teach them how to learn. That means how to search for pronunciation, how to search for grammar, how to search for synonyms, and we need to teach them how to practice. They do have a treasure chest, probably right in their pocket. It's the cell phone. There's so much that they can get off of the cell phone. And face it, almost everybody in the world has at least 1.5 cell phones. How that works, I don't know. And make them listen. This is where the podcasts come in again. Get them listening to radio. Get them listening to other people talking. This is going to help tune their ear, which in turn will let them understand where their pronunciation problems are coming from. NPR, National Public Radio, is the American version, almost like BBC. Target listening, target YouTube, as we talked about before. Now, one thing I don't know about your culture, I've never really talked to anybody about this. You can tell me afterwards when we do the Q&A. But in America, we grow up doing a pretty good job of teaching how to give presentations. I mean, we start from the time we're small. When I was in kindergarten, I remember, we do show and tell. This is my favorite toy. It's Ollie the octopus. And Ollie and I have been friends for years. We do this from the time we're small. So we grow up. By high school, we usually can give a pretty good presentation. By university, we should be downright professional. So many countries aren't. I was amazed. I lived in Brazil and taught there for 16 years. High school kids never have done a presentation, even at the best private schools. Some university students, it's the first time when they have to argue their master's thesis. That's the first formal presentation they've ever given. This is unacceptable. So we should be working on presentation skills very early on. Now, one nice trick for pronunciation. I have WhatsApp. I believe, Abba, you can shake yes or no. Is WhatsApp available there? Yes? Okay, thanks. If it's available, I always, with all of my students, I have their WhatsApp number. And there's a great reason for it. They're having problems pronouncing a new word. Let's say it's one of my words, preliminary. I take my phone right then and there, type the word preliminary, send them the text message, then I hit the microphone and say preliminary. Now they have a record on WhatsApp that they can listen to me pronounce the word properly and keep practicing it until they get it right. And they'll end up with a whole list of words, but by typing it first and then recording it, it's real easy for them to find. This works amazingly well. And it takes you a second, and your students will love you for it. Another one to do is there's plenty of speech to text apps. Have you ever tried one? I write books, so I try to use this all the time. What I found is I mispronounce the word and, A-N-D, because the computer never understands me. But the rest of my English is pretty good. So using this to work and see what words are not understandable, valuable for a student. And they can see that when they say, I was looking for the spelling of camaraderie today. And I sent it into Google, camaraderie. And it came up, come along with me. Not always accurate, but it's a good start. Millions of free resources everywhere. Now, this one, it may be culturally disgusting to you, but you got to think about this. The way I learned vocabulary when I was a kid is I had a dictionary in the bathroom, and I used to study the dictionary when I was on the toilet. I was there every day. It was a quiet time. We didn't have cell phones. I didn't have any other distraction to do. So I read the dictionary. When I finished with the dictionary, I started with the thesaurus. I had ended up with a pretty good vocabulary. Now, think about it. It may sound silly, but if you talk to your students, if they spend 5 minutes a day on the toilet, that's an extra 30 hours a year of studying. 10 minutes a day, 60 hours. 15 minutes a day, there's an extra 90 hours of study time. If they're on the toilet more than 15 minutes, they should probably see a doctor. There's probably something wrong. But take advantage of time. I hate to waste time. And in order to reach mastery of anything, I don't care if it's sports, if it's language, if it's art, whatever, it takes time. Students need to realize learning English is not easy. Becoming fluent or 100% accurate is not easy. There are no shortcuts. Yes, I know the guy on YouTube said you can learn English in 30 minutes. Yeah. Mastery takes time. I'm a professional musician. I play trumpet, among other instruments. When I was a kid, I practiced a minimum of 3 hours a day. Minimum. Sometimes even more. I drove my family and neighbors crazy. But this is what it takes. I played hockey. Hockey, 100 slap shots every single practice. Think about professional sports players, how many free throws Michael Jordan probably had to practice in order to become a pro. 3 hours a day, it's 46 days a year. Wow. Just 3 hours a day. I spent a lot of time on it. Do our students, can they honestly say they're putting in this kind of time? They need to commit. Here's another one I like: filling, drilling, and grilling, because we made drilling a bad word years ago. And this is repetition. Here's the thing I have them do now. I have them make a chart. I put negative, I put the equal sign and a plus sign. No, this isn't a messed up SWOT analysis. This is going to be finding a weak word, finding a strong word, and finding a neutral word. Because in order to communicate when they're negotiating in meetings in the future, it's the choice of word that's important. For example, if. I think if is a weak word. If I'm in a job interview, if you hire me, I'll be a good employee. No. When you hire me, I will be a good employee. Or to figure out something neutral, in the event that you hire me, I'll do a great job. Now, I do this, actually, the students do this themselves. And let me stay here. And they fill these out. And what they find is their language can be persuasive if they just know beforehand what the options are. So instead of can, they say will. We will make a successful job of this. If we need a little uncertainty, it's always there. We will most likely finish on time. And I'm a firm believer in give them what they need, whatever it is they need, make it up for them. These are things I've made in the past for my students. Even the bad drawing, they didn't understand, the difference between on the internet, in the internet, at the internet. So I drew this up. Yes, I'm not a famous artist, but it served the purpose, and my students love me for it. Pronunciation. I noticed anybody who's taught in Russia or talked to a Russian, they get their V's and their W's backwards. So, for example, they say vodka. Okay. So I built these strategies. They're little tongue twisters that I made up. You can see virtually the visual value of virtual vinyl. I can't even do it that fast. Sorry, the voice is going. And, you do what they need to help them. That's my point. Our job, I think, is to motivate them to learn and get them to do the work. And we just supply them with the content. Now, everybody always says don't use hot topics. They're my favorite. I like a little controversy. I like some language. People tend, when you're arguing and things like that, they'll be more passionate, so they'll be stronger and more conviction. Parsnips, if you need it. These are great conversation starters. They're available for free. A bunch of us got together and we each took a chapter for the book. I'm in 2 of these, and they're wonderful. You can get them on Smashwords for free. We also did a prepping series for business English, language to learn for, the presentation materials, timetables, everything. I think, and of course I think, because I'm the joint coordinator of it, IHFL BSIG is a great place to start if you're looking for materials. We have a lot, and we're happy to share it with you. So, take a look at BSIG and you can become a member. And EFL Talks is something that we do for free. We have a channel on YouTube channel. And basically, we just want to find the gaps. Just finish up. We want to teach them how to learn, how to study with error correction feedback, and don't forget the praise. So I always say, are you teching or are you teaching online? You should be teaching. Forget the technology. Just because you're online doesn't mean you need. So our job is to this while I drink. And sorry about losing my voice, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Rob, for helping to make our webinar so informative and fruitful. I would like to ask few questions by the participants, and first of all, I'll ask by myself. You said that accuracy is more important, but I think for teachers, we teach in one of the skill, that is the explanation skill, that they need to be very much fluent if while explaining, any of the concepts, if, say, for example, if they're explaining photosynthesis, and if they are accurate, but then they are not fluent, the message will go wrong, that the teacher is not prepared or teacher is not accurate or something of that type. So what do you think? We need to take both of them with the equal weightage for the teachers, or what is your take on that?
Yeah, it's really, as teachers, I'll use the 2 examples again. If I'm a waiter, does accuracy become that important? Probably not. Maybe dealing with food allergies. But if I'm a doctor or a lawyer, accuracy is very important.
Rajeshri, please mute.
Yeah. So, it comes down to, it depends.
Rajeshri Jadhav, please mute.
Thank you. So yeah, it does depend, Ooh, knowledge drenched session. I like that. Thank you. Let me see. How can a teacher improve the student's language in the classroom? Explain the possible efforts to be made for this. Yeah, that's another 5 hours or so of talking. There's lots of ways that you can improve their language in the classroom. It's Talk to them. Show them. Talk. Have a conversation. Help fill in their gaps. Make them realize their own gaps and fill them in themselves. This, I think, is more valuable. Let them know what it, make them realize what they don't know. I'll give it just a quick one. I did years ago, I had high school students. They were C1. And in Brazil, they are told every year by their teachers, no Portuguese in the classroom, no Portuguese, only English, no Portuguese. This is drilled into them, no L1. And I said, okay, today we're going to talk about something complex. We're going to talk about, let's say, global warming. So I split them into groups. And I said, what I want you to do now is within the group, I want you to discuss it. And then at the end, you're going to come up with a small presentation and talk about the things you talked about. One difference, I want you to discuss it in Portuguese. No, teacher, we can't do that. We're not allowed. I said, no, discuss it in Portuguese. Talk about it in Portuguese. Have the conversation in Portuguese. But the presentation has to be in English. For the first time ever, students asked me for dictionaries. What does that mean? They realized that they didn't have the same vocabulary in English that they had in Portuguese, but needed. So I'm not reinventing their voice. I'm helping them find and develop their own by finding what gaps they need. That's how I think we help our students. Good. Hope that helped.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Harshita, if you want to ask something.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Do you want me to post the question in the format here, or just do you want me to ask the question here?
You can ask right now.
Okay. Hi, Rob. How are you? I hope you're doing well.
Great. How are you?
All right. I'm good. Thank you so much. So, Rob, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
So, recently I was just reading some article, and that article stated a line which I was very much influenced by. So the line stated as the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yep.
What are your ideas? Sorry, did you got the line?
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I saw that quote, and I agree.
Yeah. I also, yeah, it was a very nice quote.
Yeah.
But then, I just wanted to know what are your ideas in terms of language when this particular quote came into your, in front of your eyes. What were your ideas about it when we just talk about the language aspect?
That basically we have to be open to studying and doing the work. We need to do the work to learn and learn and learn. We don't graduate high school or university and stop. For example, if a doctor stops learning after he leaves university, within 5 years, he's obsolete because medicine has probably changed. Every job changes. IT. I actually went to school. One of my majors was computer science. I used to be a programmer. I got out of it. Every year there was a new language, and I was tired of learning a new language every year. Now it's every month. Things change. We have to learn, unlearn, relearn. And when it comes to language, it's just like everything else. Fortunately, we don't have to learn and relearn how to walk and chew gum, but language, yes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. So that actually brings me to my next question. So language is always changing and evolving and adapting to the needs of its users.
Mhm.
So how in your extensive experience have you came across the changes that came over time and how you dealt with it? So some instances that, on the similar lines which came in front of you, you can just discuss those.
My cell phone, along with the dictionary and a thesaurus, because I'm learning new words all the time. Some are new words, some are old words that I never knew existed that have been around for thousands of years. Um, you know, use a dictionary. I'm a native speaker. I'm using a dictionary. You got to be able to look up what's new because it changes all the time. Everything. Look at
Okay. May I ask a
Yes, Anita,
question,
please.
sir?
Go ahead.
yes,
Good evening, sir. Here in India, it is evening, so
yeah.
good evening.
Good evening.
And yeah, sir, it is undoubtedly an informative session. We in India face a great deal of challenge, in to be fluent in spoken part of the
Sure.
second language, because in India, English is spoken as second language.
Mm-hmm.
You have rightly said that we need to put in more hours of practice to build the confidence to gain fluency and accuracy. I do agree with this. So, and I do agree that presentation play a great role not only in learning a language but building confidence too. Still, my concern is that because technology has become very handy,
Mm-hmm.
students can easily access different apps to correct themselves in many ways while writing.
Mm-hmm.
That may be, the formal way or the informal. And what I feel is that this is creating a hindrance in memorizing new words and hence affecting their fluency. What would you like to suggest to improve fluency while, can you hear me, sir? Because I saw
Yeah.
your hand.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Let me complete my question then.
yeah,
So, my question is, because they are having everything handy and they can correct themselves while writing something that may be an email or anything.
sure.
And they are taking help from the internet for everything and every now and then. So my question is that in such a scenario, how can they build their vocabulary and how can they present themselves in a when they are presenting any
Mm-hmm.
presenting themselves for any formal things. So they lack that time.
Yep.
They lack they fall short of words that time.
Right.
So what would you like to suggest to to
Well,
fill this gap?
I'm listening to the question and thinking about it. The kids today and students today have the internet. They have all these apps. They have everything else to help them with writing. And I'm thinking back when I was writing reports when I was a kid, I was using the dictionary, the thesaurus, the encyclopedia. I had just as many tools. They just took a little bit longer. I had to handwrite, which probably gave a little bit of an advantage. But I think that today's student, even though they have these shortcuts, if the word is important to them, they'll remember it. So if it's something that may not be that important, yeah, they may not have it in their vocabulary. It's in one ear, out the other, just like science words were for me. I hated science. So, every paper I wrote in high school on science, I don't remember a word. So I don't really see much of a difference. But I think that with technology, maybe they're being offered more and maybe they'll be better than we were. I don't know. I know that doesn't really answer, but maybe it gives something to think about. Is it really that different what they're doing today than what we used to do? It's just faster.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there any other question?
Ma'am, I have one more question here.
Okay.
So Rob, there are a lot of people who are very much pro in reading and writing stuff when it comes to language. But then when it comes to speaking, there is a lot of hesitation that have ingrained in them over the period of time, right? So for
Yep.
example, I have an example in my own house. My mom is a teacher from last 27 years. She's very much pro in reading and writing, but then when it comes to speaking, she's very much hesitant. So how do you teach your students, or how do you teach your peers in your group to be non-hesitant when it comes to speaking the language that you so much love and that you understand well, but then you can't speak it in the public thing?
Yes. When I was face to face, I used to use a cattle prod that gives them an electric shock if they wouldn't speak. It worked every time. No, I'm kidding. It's I find it depends on what the motivation of the person is. Sometimes it can be arguing with you. Now, don't get me wrong, Harshita, I just, that question coming from a woman is totally ridiculous. Now you're going to get angry, right? And you're going to start fighting with me. There's a conversation. That's how I turn it off. Change your emotional state of mind and get you to argue. I usually use the male female because that really gets women talking. Men, it's a little bit harder. Talk about sports or talk about girls. They usually like to lie and brag. It's motivating and finding the motivation for people to talk. When I was in Brazil, I, had a family. I was married and had 2 stepkids, and they were Brazilian and they were learning the language. It was motivating them to talk. I said, "You want to eat dinner? You tell me what you want in English. You can't? Go hungry." Find the motivation. Every person has their little on-off switch. That's what one of the things, like I say, I'm not a teacher, I'm a facilitator. Or maybe I'm a switcher oner. I don't know. I hope that helps.
Yeah, so basically you're suggesting to have a trigger point, and then just to trigger that point and then find the motivation that comes through it. Yeah,
That's it.
thank you so much. That works. Yeah.
Yeah. Like anybody, we know this as teachers. Once you get them started, you'll never shut them up. That's what we want.
Yeah, right.
So thank you. Thanks again for helping us become more aware with respect to speaking, pronunciation, and accuracy. We hope you will consent, Rob, we hope you'll consent to join and speak to us again by visiting our university physically once the lockdown is completely lifted. So
Yes.
thank you all for participating so well. And this is Dr. Abha signing off on behalf of GD Goenka Learn Academy. Stay tuned, stay connected, stay happy, and stay safe. Thank you.